My name is Megan Davis, and at 28, I was barely making ends meet as a kindergarten teacher while my brother Ryan basked in his new $50 million lottery jackpot. Standing in the corner of his marble-floored mansion during his extravagant housewarming party, I nursed both my cheap champagne and my growing resentment. I was genuinely happy for him, but something felt deeply unfair about the universe's distribution of luck. That's when an elderly gentleman approached me, his knowing eyes seeing right through my facade. Before diving into how this stranger changed everything, take a second to hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for what happened next. Growing up in suburban Boston, Ryan and I were always different sides of the same familial coin. Our modest split-level home on Maple Street housed 4 distinctly different personalities, with mine and Ryan's contrasting the most sharply. I was the planner, the careful one. By age 10, I had a color-coded homework system and saved every dollar from my lemonade stand. Ryan, 4 years older, operated on charm and impulse. He could talk his way out of any situation with that infectious laugh and disarming smile. While I meticulously arranged my bookshelf by genre and then alphabetically, Ryan's room looked like a tornado testing site. "Megs, why worry so much about tomorrow? Today's right here," he'd say, ruffling my hair as he rushed out to meet friends, homework incomplete. Our parents' response to our differences only widened the gap. Mom and Dad claimed they loved us equally, but their actions told a different story. Ryan was their golden boy, a charmer who could do no permanent wrong. I still remember the night he took Dad's Buick without permission when he was 16. It was a school night, and he'd snuck out to impress some friends. When the call came at 11 p.m. that he'd wrapped the car around a telephone pole, my parents rushed out in panic. Ryan walked away without a scratch, but the car was totaled. Insurance wouldn't cover it since he wasn't licensed to drive it. The next morning, I expected epic consequences. Instead, Dad clapped Ryan on the shoulder at breakfast and said, "Well, son, I guess we all make mistakes. Just glad you're okay." 2 months later, when I accidentally stained the living room carpet with watercolor paints during an art project, my mother grounded me for 3 weeks. "Megan, why can't you be more careful? We don't have money for new carpeting," she'd scolded, though the stain was barely visible after cleaning. These patterns continued through high school. Ryan got caught skipping classes but still got a new PlayStation for Christmas. I made honor roll every semester but received practical gifts like college test prep books. Despite everything, I loved my brother. Ryan had a genuine warmth beneath his carelessness. When bullies mocked my thrift store clothes in 7th grade, it was Ryan who confronted them, then took me for ice cream afterward. "Don't listen to those idiots, Megs. You're the smartest person I know," he'd said, buying me a double scoop despite being broke himself. After high school, I pursued education at State University, working 2 part-time jobs to minimize student loans. Meanwhile, Ryan bounced between community college semesters and various get-rich-quick schemes. There was the lawn care business that lasted one summer until he forgot to secure the equipment in his truck, losing thousands of dollars worth of tools on the highway. Then came the smartphone repair venture, abandoned when he realized it required patience and precision. His brief stint selling nutritional supplements ended when the company was investigated for pyramid scheme practices. Between his failed ventures, Ryan would show up at my tiny college apartment, always with the same sheepish grin. "Megs, I hate to ask, but could I borrow $200 until Friday?" became a regular refrain. Despite my own financial tightrope walk, I almost always helped him. Sometimes it meant eating ramen for 2 weeks straight, but he was my brother. When he actually paid me back, which happened roughly half the time, he'd add a small gift, flowers from the grocery store clearance section or a chocolate bar from the gas station. After college, I secured a teaching position at Brookside Elementary. The pay was modest, but the work fulfilled me. Every September brought 25 new 5-year-olds into my life, with their gap-toothed selves and endless questions. I rented a 1-bedroom apartment with questionable plumbing but decorated it with secondhand furniture and plants to make it home. Ryan, meanwhile, continued his pattern of enthusiastic beginnings and abrupt endings. He worked as a bartender, a car salesman, a real estate photographer, never sticking with anything long enough to build stability. He'd moved back in with our parents 3 times by his 30th birthday. Our relationship had grown increasingly strained. I loved my brother, but his constant financial crises and their impact on our aging parents weighed on me. When Mom needed knee surgery, I contributed what I could from my teacher's salary while Ryan promised to help but never materialized with actual funds. Then came the call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday evening in October. I was grading finger painting projects when my phone lit up with Ryan's name. Megs, his voice vibrated with an energy I hadn't heard in years. "You're not going to believe this. I won. I actually won." "Won what?" I asked, half distracted by a particularly artistic rendition of what might have been a dinosaur or possibly a refrigerator. "The lottery. The freaking Powerball. 54.8 million after taxes. Can you believe it? I'm rich, Megs, we're rich." I sat down hard on my second-hand sofa, the dinosaur refrigerator painting floating to the floor. That's impossible," I whispered, but the uncontained joy in his voice convinced me this wasn't another of Ryan's exaggerations. In that moment, I felt nothing but genuine happiness for my brother. After years of near misses and false starts, Ryan had stumbled into the one thing he always believed would happen: effortless fortune. "I'm so happy for you," I said, meaning every word. Little did I know how quickly everything would change. Ryan's lottery win wasn't just a financial windfall, that was a media spectacle. The exact amount was $54.8 million after taxes, a figure that dominated local headlines and morning shows within hours of his claim. The day Ryan collected his oversized check, camera flashes turned the lottery commission office into a lightning storm. He wore a brand new designer suit and his signature wide grin. I stood in the background, watching my brother transform into a celebrity before my eyes. "How does it feel to be a multimillionaire?" a reporter shouted. "Like I always knew it would," Ryan answered with practiced confidence, as though he'd been rehearsing this moment his entire life. Within 48 hours, Ryan had hired a financial team, an attorney, a publicist, and a personal assistant named Brittany, who seemed to have stepped directly from a fashion magazine. His phone rang constantly with congratulations from people I'd never heard him mention before. The spending began immediately and extravagantly. First came the mansion, a $12 million, 15,000 square foot Mediterranean-style estate in the most exclusive neighborhood in the state. With 7 bedrooms, 9 bathrooms, an indoor and outdoor pool, a home theater, and a 4-car garage, it was larger than our entire childhood block combined. "Each bedroom has its own theme," Ryan explained during a video call tour, panning his phone around a room decorated entirely in various shades of blue. "This one's called Ocean Serenity. The designer said it promotes calming energy." The cars followed in quick succession. A custom Tesla Model S Plaid with every available upgrade. A vintage Porsche 911 he'd coveted since high school. A practical Range Rover for groceries, he'd joked, though I doubted Ryan had set foot in a grocery store since the win. My brother's face appeared everywhere. He sat on plush couches with morning show hosts, laughing about his "regular guy wins big" story. He guested on podcasts discussing wealth management, though he'd been wealthy for less than a month. Local businesses invited him to ribbon cuttings and grand openings, eager to be associated with his new celebrity status. With each appearance, I noticed subtle changes in my brother. The Ryan I knew had been irresponsible but genuine. This new Ryan spoke in practiced soundbites and name-dropped celebrities as though they were old friends. "I had lunch with Bradley last week," he mentioned casually during one of our increasingly rare phone conversations. "Bradley who?" I asked. "Bradley Cooper, Megs." "Teep up," he replied with a laugh that sounded nothing like my brother's. Meanwhile, my life continued in stark contrast. The week of Ryan's Tesla delivery, my 10-year-old Honda refused to start, requiring a $700 repair I could barely afford. The ceiling in my bathroom developed a leak that my landlord promised to fix eventually. My student loan statement arrived with its monthly reminder of the decade of payments still ahead. I didn't begrudge Ryan his fortune, at least I try not to. But the contrast between our lives had never been so painfully obvious. Our parents adapted to Ryan's new status with predictable enthusiasm. Mom now posted daily on social media about my successful son and share articles about him with her friends. Dad proudly wore a custom-made "Lottery Dad" hat Ryan had given him. Neither mentioned that their daughter had just been nominated for Teacher of the Year at her school. 3 months after the win, Ryan's text messages arrived on my phone. "Throwing a little housewarming next Saturday. Gonna be the event of the year. You should come." The follow-up message contained a formal digital invitation with the dress code listed as cocktail attire/upscale. I stared at my closet full of t-shirt clothes and sensible shoes, wondering what qualified as upscale in my brother's new world. "Can't wait to see you there," he texted again, "It's been too long, Megs." That part, at least, was true. Despite living only 30 minutes apart, I hadn't seen my brother in person since the Lottery Commission office. Our lives had diverged so completely that we now existed in entirely different orbits, his expanding into the universe of unlimited possibility, when continuing its predictable rotation around the classroom calendar. I confirmed my attendance and began searching online for an affordable dress that might pass for upscale. I told myself I was happy for this opportunity to reconnect with my brother. Perhaps away from the cameras and new entourage, I'd find the Ryan I grew up with still existed somewhere beneath the designer clothes and practiced smile. I didn't realize then that the party would change my life even more profoundly than it had changed Ryan's, but for entirely different reasons. The line of luxury vehicles stretched nearly half a mile from Ryan's new estate. As my weathered Honda crawled between Bentleys and Maseratis, I felt like a plastic fork at a silver cutlery convention. At the gate, security guards in sleek black suits checked IDs against guest lists on tablets. Beyond them, valets in crimson vests jogged to and from the circular driveway, whisking away vehicles to some unseen parking area. "Name?" asked a guard with an earpiece and expressionless face. "Megan Davis." "I'm Ryan's sister," I added, feeling strangely compelled to explain my presence. His eyes flickered with momentary surprise as he glanced from his tablet to my car. "Of course, Miss Davis, please proceed to the valet stand." As I pulled forward, a photographer stepped into my path, camera raised expectantly. Upon seeing my Honda, he lowered it and stepped aside without taking a picture. The valet who opened my door couldn't quite hide his wince at the screech of my unoiled hinges. "Enjoy your evening, ma'am," he said with professional courtesy, handing me a ticket with a number. The mansion's exterior was illuminated by strategic lighting that highlighted its architectural features and the meticulously landscaped grounds. Music and conversation drifted from within, accompanied by the soft tinkling of glassware. I smoothed the front of my dress, the nicest I owned but clearly not designed for this caliber of event, approached the open front door. Inside, Ryan's new home resembled a museum crossed with a luxury hotel. The soaring entry featured a chandelier that must have cost more than my annual salary. Fresh flowers in massive arrangements perfumed the air. Waitstaff in formal attire circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres I couldn't identify. "Caviar blini with creme fraiche and gold leaf," explained a server as I hesitantly took one. I nodded as though I encountered edible bowl on a regular basis. The guests were equally impressive. I recognized a state senator in conversation with a famous retired quarterback. A woman I was certain had been in last year's blockbuster superhero movie laughed with a group near a marble fireplace. Everyone sparkled literally, in many cases, with diamonds cashing light from every direction. "You must be Megan," said a woman approaching me, her smile professionally whitened and her handshake firm. "I'm Brittany, Ryan's personal assistant. He mentioned you'd be coming. Let me show you around." Brittany guided me through rooms more suited to a palace than a home. The grand kitchen where a team of chefs prepared delicacies. The two-story library filled with books that looked unread. The home theater with custom leather recliners and a screen larger than most commercial cinemas. Ryan had the pool heated for tonight, though most guests won't swim, of course, Brittany explained, gesturing through floor-to-ceiling windows to the illuminated aquamarine rectangle where a few people dangled their feet from the edge, cocktails in hand. "Where is Ryan?" I asked, realizing I hadn't spotted my brother among the hundreds of guests. "He'll make his entrance soon," she replied with a knowing smile. "It's been choreographed." I nodded as though this were perfectly normal and not the strangest statement I'd heard about my brother who once wore mismatched socks to his high school graduation because he couldn't be bothered to find a matching pair. Left to my own devices, I drifted through the crowd, acutely aware of my department store dress amid designer labels. Conversation snippets floated around me. "Just bought a minor stake in the team, just for fun. Third home in Aspen, but the views aren't quite what we wanted." Said to myself, why charter when you can buy? I reached for another glass of champagne from a passing tray, hoping it might dull the growing sense of alienation. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," said a man beside me, his New England accent thick and authentic amid the practiced diction surrounding us. "Is it that obvious?" I asked, turning to find a middle-aged man in a simple but well-tailored suit. "Only to another outsider," he replied with a wink. "I'm just the contractor who managed the house renovation. Bought an invitation as a courtesy. Name's Tom." Our conversation about the absurdity of installing gold-plated bathroom fixtures was interrupted by a sudden dimming of lights and swelling of music. Spotlights converged on the grand staircase as Ryan descended like a monarch greeting his subjects. He wore a tuxedo that probably cost more than my car and was flanked by two celebrities I recognized from reality television. "Welcome, friends," he announced, arms spread wide. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate this new chapter of my life." The crowd erupted in applause as though he'd said something profound instead of thanking people for attending a party with free premium alcohol and gourmet food. Ryan launched into a speech thanking various people who had been there for him: his new financial advisor, his publicity team, his interior designer, his personal trainer. My name never crossed his lips, nor any mention of our parents, who I now noticed were absent despite living just across town. As the speech concluded, servers rolled out a massive cake shaped like Ryan's new mansion, complete with working LED lights and miniature fondant Tesla in the driveway. Guests cooed appreciatively as though they were witnessing a historic moment. I watched as Ryan distributed small gift boxes to a select group of guests, his inner circle, I heard someone call them. Inside each box was a luxury watch or piece of jewelry, tokens of appreciation for their unwavering support during his journey. These were people who hadn't known Ryan existed 4 months ago. Later, as I stood by a window contemplating how to make a graceful exit, I overheard my brother's voice from the adjacent room. He was regaling a group with stories of his humble beginnings. "I basically raised myself," he told them, his voice carrying clearly. "Family didn't really get me, you know. Always knew I was destined for something bigger than that small-town mentality." The Ryan I knew had never expressed such sentiments before the lottery. Our town wasn't even particularly small, and our parents, despite their favoritism, had certainly raised him with every advantage they could afford. "God, can you imagine still living that life?" laughed a woman in response. "Teaching kindergarten or whatever." My brother's laugh joined hers. "Some people just don't have vision," he replied. Something inside me crumbled. The champagne turned sour in my stomach as I set down my glass and slipped away through the nearest door, finding myself on a terrace overlooking manicured gardens and a valley of city lights below. The cool night air felt like a mercy against my flushed skin as I gripped the stone balustrade and fought back tears that threatened to ruin my carefully applied drugstore mascara. I wasn't crying for the money Ryan had that I didn't. I was mourning the brother I'd apparently lost long before this night. "Beautiful view," said a quiet voice beside me, "though somewhat diminished by the company one must keep to enjoy it." I turned, hastily wiping at my eyes, to find an elderly gentleman standing a respectful distance away, his kind eyes assessing me with unexpected understanding. The man who joined me on the terrace was tall and distinguished, with silver hair neatly combed back from a high forehead. He appeared to be in his 70s, though his posture and clear eyes suggested a vitality many younger men lacked. Unlike the flashy attire of most guests, he wore a classic dark suit that spoke of old money and refined taste. "I didn't mean to intrude on your solitude," he said, his voice carrying a gentle authority. "But sometimes a friendly face is welcome when one feels adrift in a sea of strangers." "I'm fine," I replied automatically, the standard response I'd perfected as a teacher when parents asked if their children's behavior exhausted me. His smile was knowing. "No, you're not. And that's perfectly understandable. These sudden wealth spectacles can be rather overwhelming, especially for those who remember the person behind the performance." His perception startled me. "You know Ryan from before?" "Not directly," he replied, extending his hand. "Maxwell Henderson. And you must be Megan, the kindergarten teacher sister I've heard mentioned." I shook his hand, surprised by the warmth and strength in his grip. "Mentioned by whom?" Ryan hasn't exactly been showcasing his family connections tonight. Maxwell leaned against the balustrade, gazing out at the view. "I make it my business to know the full story behind these overnight success tales. They fascinate me, particularly how wealth transforms people, for better or worse." Something about his calm presence invited confidence. Perhaps it was the contrast with the artificial energy inside, or maybe it was simply the relief of honest conversation after hours of "It's like he's become someone else entirely," I confessed. The brother I knew had his flaws, but there was a genuine heart under the irresponsibility. "This person," I gestured toward the house, "I don't recognize him anymore." Maxwell nodded thoughtfully. "Money doesn't change people so much as it reveals them, Miss Davis. It removes constraints that previously forced compromise and consideration. Without those guardrails, we become more purely ourselves for better or worse." "That's a depressing thought," I said. "It suggests my brother was always this person underneath." Or perhaps he's lost at the moment, intoxicated by possibilities he never learned to manage, Maxwell offered. Tell me about your work with the children. That requires a special kind of patience and vision. The sudden shift surprised me, but I welcomed the chance to discuss something meaningful. I told him about my classroom, my students, the rewards of witnessing small moments of growth and understanding. Maxwell listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions about educational philosophy and the challenges of modern teaching. You speak of your students with such care, he observed, as though each one matters individually to you. They do, I replied simply. Every child deserves to be seen for who they are, not just what they can do or what they have. A rare perspective in today's world, Maxwell said. And what would you do, Medin Davis, if you had the resources your brother now possesses? The question caught me off guard. I'd avoid this particular daydream, finding it pointlessly painful. I've never really thought about it, I lied. Maxwell's expression suggested he knew better but wouldn't press the point. Instead, he shared a story about his own past, how he'd grown up in modest circumstances in western Massachusetts, the son of a mill worker and a school secretary. My life changed direction when a teacher much like yourself took interest in my aptitude for mathematics, he explained. Mrs. Patterson spent her lunch breaks teaching me advanced concepts, eventually helping me secure a scholarship that led to MIT, Wall Street, and beyond. She sounds wonderful, I said. She changed my life with small acts of kindness and attention, Maxwell agreed. And I've spent 50 years trying to create similar inflection points for others. As we continued talking, Maxwell occasionally glanced through the windows at the party inside, his expression thoughtful but unreadable. When Ryan appeared in our line of sight, surrounded by admirers as he demonstrated some feature of his smart home system, I noticed Maxwell watching him with what seemed like disappointment. Have you met my brother tonight? I asked. Briefly, Maxwell replied. He was preoccupied with his entrance preparations when I arrived. We've crossed paths before, however. Before I could ask what he meant, Maxwell checked his watch, a simple timepiece that nonetheless suggested quality craftsmanship rather than ostentatious wealth. I should be going, he said. I've lingered longer than intended, but our conversation has been the highlight of the evening. As he straightened from the balustrade, he reached into his inner jacket pocket and withdrew a sealed envelope. Megan, I'd like you to have this, he said, extending it toward me. But I must ask that you don't open it until you're alone at home. Can you promise me that? I stared at the crisp white envelope, my name written on the front in elegant handwriting. What is this? Let's call it a correction of imbalances, Maxwell said cryptically. Some luck deserves to be redistributed to where it might do the most good. My first instinct was to refuse. I'd been raised to be skeptical of strangers bearing gifts, especially ones delivered with mysterious condition. Maxwell seemed to read my hesitation. I understand your caution. If it helps, I'm not giving you anything that belongs to your brother. This comes from my own resources, which are considerable. You can research me when you get home. Maxwell Henderson, former CEO of Quantum Financial. Curiosity overrode caution. I accepted the envelope, which was surprisingly weighty for its size. Thank you for the conversation, Medin Davis, Maxwell said with a slight bow. It has restored my faith that wealth occasionally finds its way to the worthy, even if through circuitous routes. With that enigmatic statement, he turned and walked away, disappearing around the corner of the terrace before I could ask any of the dozens of questions now racing through my mind. I looked down at the envelope in my hands, tempted to open it immediately despite my promise. Something about Maxwell Henderson inspired trust, but also a sense that he operated according to rules and systems beyond my current understanding. The sounds of the party continued behind me, laughter, music, the clinking of expensive crystal, but they now seemed to belong to a different world than the one containing this mysterious envelope and the promise I'd just made to a stranger. I slipped the envelope into my purse and decided it was time to leave. Whatever Maxwell Henderson had given me, it felt more significant than anything inside my brother's mansion. The drive home from Ryan's mansion felt surreal. I navigated the familiar streets on autopilot, my mind fixated on the envelope resting in my purse on the passenger seat. Each stoplight became an exercise in willpower, a moment where I could potentially break my promise to Maxwell and peek inside. Yet something stopped me each time, a sense that this moment deserved the proper setting and attention. My apartment building looked particularly shabby after the opulence I'd just left. The security door still had the crack from when someone had tried to break in last spring. The elevator was out of service again, forcing me to climb 3 flights of stairs in heels. As I unlocked my door, Mrs. Patel from across the hall poked her head out. "Fancy dress tonight, Megan? Hot date?" she asked with the friendly nosiness of a longtime neighbor. "Just a party," I replied, managing a smile. "Nothing special." Inside, my apartment greeted me with its familiar imperfections. The water stain on the ceiling had grown since morning, forming a shape vaguely resembling Australia. Second-hand furniture, chosen carefully from thrift stores and flea markets, looked even more worn in contrast to the palatial furnishings I'd seen hours earlier. I kicked off my shoes and placed my purse on the kitchen counter, removing Maxwell's envelope with the care one might show a fragile artifact. For several minutes, I simply stared at it, running my fingers over the heavy, cream-colored paper and the elegant script of my name. "This is ridiculous," I finally said aloud to my empty apartment. "Just open it." Taking a deep breath, I carefully broke the seal and withdrew the contents. Inside were 2 items, a folded check and a handwritten letter on matching stationery. I unfolded the check first and nearly dropped it when I saw the amount, $10,000,000 made out to Megan Davis, signed with the same elegant script that adorned the envelope. "This can't be real," I whispered, sinking into my kitchen chair as my legs suddenly felt too weak to support me. With trembling hands, I unfolded the letter. Dear Ms. Davis, our conversation this evening confirmed what my research had already suggested. You are a person of exceptional character and perspective. While your brother has been blessed with extraordinary financial fortune, I believe you possess something far more valuable: wisdom and compassion that money cannot buy. You may not remember me from our first indirect encounter, but I sold your brother the lottery ticket that changed his life. What he doesn't know is that I own the convenience store as one of many small businesses in my investment portfolio. I established these stores years ago as social laboratories of sorts, allowing me to observe human nature in its most authentic state. For the past 30 years, I have conducted a private experiment, watching how sudden wealth transforms ordinary people. I've witnessed inspiring stories of generosity and growth, but far more often, I've seen what you observed tonight: the erosion of character and connection that frequently accompanies unearned abundance. The enclosed check represents a redistribution of fortune, drawn from my personal accounts, not your brother's windfall. I have been blessed with tremendous financial success throughout my life, and at my age, I find greater satisfaction in strategic giving than in accumulation. This gift comes with no formal conditions. I trust your judgment completely. However, I would offer one piece of advice. Wealth is most meaningful when it creates freedom to pursue purpose rather than merely pleasure. Based on our conversation, I believe you understand this distinction already. Should you wish to verify my identity or the validity of this check, my office will be expecting your call. The number is listed below. With respect and confidence in your future. Maxwell Henderson. I read the letter 3 times, trying to absorb its implications. $10 million. A sum that would fundamentally change my life, offered by a stranger who had observed my brother and me and made his own judgment about worthiness. My first instinct was skepticism. This had to be some elaborate prank or worse, a scam. I grabbed my laptop and searched for Maxwell Henderson Quantum Financial. The results immediately validated his identity. Maxwell Henderson had been a Wall Street prodigy in the 1970s who built Quantum Financial into a powerhouse before stepping down as CEO 15 years ago. His estimated net worth exceeded $2 billion, though he lived relatively modestly compared to other financial titans. Articles detailed his philanthropic work, primarily focused on education initiatives and opportunity rebalancing for promising individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds. One recent profile mentioned his unconventional approach to wealth distribution and quoted him saying, "I'm less interested in attaching my name to buildings than in creating inflection points in individual life." I sat back, mind racing. The check in my hands represented more money than I would earn in 2 centuries of teaching. It was real. Maxwell Henderson was real. And he had chosen to give me this extraordinary gift based on a single conversation and whatever research he had conducted beforehand. Part of me felt I should call Ryan immediately. He was my brother, after all, and this bizarre twist connected to his lottery win. But another part hesitated. Ryan had changed so fundamentally in just a few months. How would he react to learning that his ordinary sister had been handed a fortune by the very man who sold him his winning ticket? The rational teacher part of my brain began making lists of what this money could mean. Paying off my student loans, buying a modest but comfortable home, supporting our parents in retirement, traveling during summer breaks, creating an educational foundation for underprivileged students, never again having to choose between car repairs and dental work. The possibilities stretched endlessly before me, simultaneously liberating and overwhelming. With this money, I could continue teaching not because I needed the paycheck, but because I loved the work. I could donate supplies to my classroom instead of buying them from my limited salary. I could establish scholarships for my students. I could live without the constant background hum of financial anxiety that had accompanied me since childhood. For hours, I sat at my kitchen table, alternating between staring at the check, rereading Maxwell's letter, and researching his background. As dawn broke, I reached a decision. I would deposit the check, but tell no one, not Ryan, not my parents, not even my closest friends, until I had processed this change and developed a careful plan for moving forward. This wasn't just money, it was responsibility, and unlike my brother, I intended to handle it with the care it deserved. The week following Maxwell's gift became a strange double life. By day, I taught kindergartners about shapes and letters, helped with zip coats and tied shoelaces. By night, I researched wealth management, philanthropic structures, and the psychological impacts of sudden financial change. The check remained in my purse, accompanying me everywhere like a secret companion. Each morning, I considered depositing it. Each evening, I found another reason to wait just one more day. My hesitation wasn't about the check's legitimacy. Further research had confirmed Maxwell Henderson's reputation as an eccentric but ethical billionaire with a history of unconventional philanthropy. Rather, I struggled with fundamental questions about fairness, responsibility, and identity. Was it right to accept this money when I'd done nothing to earn it? Wasn't that the very thing I'd internally criticized about Ryan's lottery win? Would this fortune change me as dramatically as it had changed my brother? Sunday evening, sitting cross-legged on my sofa with a legal pad filled with pros and cons, I finally called the number Maxwell had provided in his letter. "Henderson Group, this is Alina speaking," answered a crisp, professional voice. "Hello," I said, suddenly nervous. "This is Megan Davis. I met Mr. Henderson last weekend and he gave me something." "And Miss Davis, yes, Mr. Henderson mentioned you might call. Would you like me to connect you with his office?" Before I could answer, I heard a click and then Maxwell's distinct voice. "Megan, I'm pleased to hear from you. I trust you've had time to consider my offer." "That's why I'm calling," I replied. "I have questions." "I'd be disappointed if you didn't. Please, ask anything you wish." For the next hour, Maxwell patiently addressed my concerns. He explained that his wealth distribution program was a personal project spanning decades, identifying individuals with transformative potential who lacked only financial resources to realize that potential. "But why me?" I asked. "I'm just a kindergarten teacher." "There is no just about shaping young minds, Miss Davis," Maxwell replied. "Besides, my gift isn't merely recognition of your current work but an investment in what you might accomplish with proper resources." When I expressed concern about managing such a sum responsibly, Maxwell offered connections to trustworthy financial advisors while emphasizing that all decisions remain mine alone. "This is not a grant with conditions," he insisted. "It's an opportunity for you to define your own purpose without financial constraint." Our conversation ended with his assurance that whether I accepted or declined the money, he respected my thoughtfulness in considering the decision carefully. The following day, I requested a personal day from school and scheduled appointments with both a financial advisor from Maxwell's recommended list and an independent counselor I researched separately. The parallel consultations confirmed the check's legitimacy and outlined preliminary strategies for managing the funds. William Chen, the independent advisor, laid out various options in his Downtown office. "With $10 million, properly managed, you could generate around $400,000 annually without touching the principal," he explained. "That's assuming conservative investments focused on preservation rather than aggressive growth." The figure stunned me. My current teaching salary was just under $52,000. What would you recommend for someone in my position? I asked. William smiled. Professionally, I'd suggest taking 6 months before making any major changes. Put the bulk in secure, diverse investments while you adjust to this new reality. Keep teaching if you enjoy it. Don't buy anything extravagant immediately. And unprofessionally, I asked, cashing the distinction in his wording. Unprofessionally, he leaned forward. Take a small portion, say $100,000, and address any immediate needs or long-standing wishes. Clear debts, fix your car, take a nice vacation. The psychological benefit of eliminating financial stress will help you make better decisions about the rest. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a fresh legal pad. At the top, I wrote, immediate actions, and began listing practical steps. 1. Deposit check in new separate account. 2. Pay off student loans $43,782. 3. Establish emergency fund. 4. Research modest home options. 5. Continue teaching through end of school year. 6. Develop framework for education foundation. Seeing the plan in writing calmed the swirling thoughts that had occupied my mind since the party. This could be managed. I could be thoughtful where Ryan had been impulsive, strategic where he had been scattered. The next question was harder. Should I tell anyone? I thought first of my parents. Their reaction would inevitably involve comparison to Ryan, either placing me on the same pedestal of sudden wealth or questioning why lightning had miraculously struck their family twice. Neither scenario appealed to me. My closest friend, Amanda, would keep my secret, but knowing her precarious financial situation as a single mother, the knowledge would inevitably strain our relationship. And Ryan, the brother who couldn't remember my existence during his grand party speech, who had dismissed teaching my passion as lacking vision. I picked up my phone and scrolled to his contact, thumb hovering over the call button. Then I remembered Maxwell's words about money revealing rather than changing people. Perhaps this was my opportunity to reveal my own character through careful choice rather than impulse. I set the phone down without calling. There would be time for sharing later, after I had established my own relationship with this new reality. The next morning, I visited First National Bank and met with their private client manager. 2 hours later, I walked out having established a new account, deposited Maxwell's check, and initiated the process of paying off my student loans. The movement from theoretical to actual left me lightheaded as I returned to my car. As May turned to June and the school year approached its conclusion, I maintained my normal routine externally while transforming my financial situation behind the scenes. I purchased a modest but beautiful 3-bedroom home in a quiet neighborhood, arranging to take possession after the school year ended. I researched educational foundations, consulting experts in nonprofit structure and governance. Through it all, I continued teaching with renewed energy, not able to focus entirely on my students without the constant background worry about making rent or affording supplies. When little Zach needed special reading materials, I ordered them without checking my bank balance first. When the class field trip fund fell short, I anonymously covered the difference. These small freedoms felt more meaningful than any mansion or luxury car could have been. On the last day of school, as I helped my students clean out their desks and prepare for summer, 5-year-old Lily handed me a crayon drawing of 2 stick figures holding hands. "This is you and me," she explained. "You're the best teacher ever." In that moment, surrounded by children I had guided through a year of growth, I knew with certainty that Maxwell Henderson's investment was in good hands. Unlike Ryan, I wouldn't be transformed by wealth, I would transform it into opportunity for others. That evening, I drafted a letter to Maxwell, expressing my gratitude not just for the money but for the trust it represented. I outlined my plans for the education foundation I would establish, focused on providing resources and opportunities for underprivileged students. "Your gift has created exactly the inflection point you described," I wrote. "Not by changing who I am, but by removing the barriers to becoming more fully who I've always been." The future stretched before me, filled with possibility rather than constraint. For the first time in my life, I felt the freedom to create meaningful change rather than merely manage circumstances. And I hadn't needed a winning lottery ticket to get there. 6 months after Maxwell handed me the envelope, I stood in the kitchen of my new home, preparing coffee for an unexpected visitor. The house wasn't extravagant, 3 bedrooms, a modest yard, built in the 1960s but thoughtfully renovated, but it was mine, paid for in full. No mortgage, no landlord, no leaking ceiling shaped like Australia. My life had transformed, but in ways that would be largely invisible to casual observers. I still taught kindergarten, still wore sensible shoes, still drove a practical car, though a newer, reliable model. The profound changes lay beneath the surface. The absence of financial anxiety, the freedom to give generously, the foundation taking shape with the help of education and nonprofit experts. I'd named it the Inflection Point Foundation, a nod to Maxwell's philosophy. Its mission was elegantly simple: identifying promising students from disadvantaged backgrounds and providing them with resources, mentorship, and opportunities. We'd already established pilot programs in 3 schools, including my own. The doorbell rang as I arranged cookies on a plate. When I opened the door, Ryan stood on my porch, hands in the pockets of designer jeans, looking simultaneously familiar and like a stranger. "Nice place, Megs," he said, glancing around as he entered. "Teaching must be paying better these days." "Coffee," I offered, leading him to the kitchen without addressing his comment. We settled at my breakfast nook, the November sun streaming through windows that overlooked a small garden where I'd planted spring bulbs the previous weekend. Ryan looked thinner than at his party, the designer stubble on his jaw now an actual beard. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his movements carried a nervous energy I remembered from our childhood, when he'd broken something and was working up to confessing. "So," I said after several minutes of small talk about the weather and our parents, "what brings you by? It's been, 4 months since we spoke?" Ryan winced. "Has it been that long? Sorry, Megs, things have been complicated." "I saw the article about the investment group that defrauded you," I said gently. "That must have been difficult." The exclusive investment opportunity had cost Ryan nearly $8 million, according to financial news reports. The scheme had targeted newly wealthy individuals with promises of extraordinary returns and celebrity connection. "Yeah, well," Ryan shrugged, attempting nonchalance. "Lesson learned, I guess, still plenty left." But his eyes told a different story. The easy confidence that had characterized him since childhood had dimmed, replaced by something I recognized from my own mirror in harder times: uncertainty. "How's the influencer career going?" I asked, referencing his recent attempts to monetize his lottery win through social media sponsorships and appearances. Ryan's laugh held no humor. "Turns out people get bored with guy who got lucky pretty fast. Last week I got fewer likes than a cat video." We sipped our coffee in silence for a moment. I'd imagined this conversation many times over recent months, rehearsing revelations and explanations. But sitting across from my brother now, seeing the genuine distress beneath his practiced facade, those scenarios seemed unnecessarily dramatic. "I miss who we were," he said suddenly, staring into his cup. "Before all this, remember when we used to watch those terrible sci-fi movies together on Sunday afternoons? You'd make that cinnamon popcorn, and I'd do all the character voices." "I remember," I said softly. "You did a great alien overlord impression." Another silence, more comfortable than the last. "I thought money would fix everything," Ryan continued. "That's the story, right? Win the lottery, solve all your problems. But it just created different ones, bigger ones." He glanced up, vulnerability naked in his expression. "Everyone wants something from me now. And I can never tell if people like me or just what I can give them." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I liked you before the money, Ryan. Even when you drove me crazy." His eyes welled unexpectedly. "I've been a terrible brother, Megs. That party, the things I said, I don't know who that person was." "Money doesn't change people," I said, echoing Maxwell. "It just reveals what was already there, without the constraints that usually keep it in check." Ryan nodded slowly. "I'm not sure I like what it revealed about me." "The good news," I replied, "is that recognition is the first step toward change." We talked for hours that afternoon, really talked, in ways we hadn't since childhood. Ryan shared his growing disillusionment with the emptiness of pure consumption. I listened without judgment, offering perspective without revealing my own financial transformation. The time wasn't right for that disclosure. This moment needed to be about reconnection, not comparison. As autumn turned to winter, Ryan and I rebuilt our relationship one conversation at a time. He began making different choices, selling the mansion for a comfortable but less ostentatious home, investing in sustainable businesses rather than luxury goods, reconnecting with authentic friends from before his win. Meanwhile, my foundation quietly expanded its work. We established a scholarship program for graduating seniors pursuing education degrees, a summer enrichment camp for elementary students, and a teacher resource fund that provided classroom supplies and professional development opportunity. I continued teaching, finding even greater fulfillment now that I could focus entirely on my students without personal financial stress clouding my perspective. The joy of witnessing a child sound out their first word or master a challenging concept remained the most meaningful reward I could imagine. One crisp February morning, I arrived at school to find Maxwell Henderson waiting by the front entrance, looking exactly as he had the night of our first meeting. "Mr. Henderson," I greeted him with genuine pleasure. "What brings you to Brookside Elementary?" "Curiosity," he replied with a smile. "I wanted to see the renowned Miss Davis in her natural habitat." With my principal's permission, Maxwell observed my classroom that morning, sitting unobtrusively in the reading corner as my kindergartners worked on letter recognition and basic math concepts. During recess, he joined me at my desk. "You haven't told your brother," he observed. It wasn't a question. "Not yet," I confirm. "He's finding his own way right now, learning important lessons about value and purpose. I think the knowledge might interfere with that process." Maxwell nodded approvingly. "A wise assessment. And the foundation work?" "Growing steadily. We're focusing on depth rather than breadth, meaningful impact for fewer students rather than superficial support for many." "Exactly the approach I would have recommended," Maxwell said, "though I purposely avoid making any recommendations. The choices had to be yours." "May I ask you something?" I said, organizing alphabet blocks as we talked. "Why do you do this, what did you call it, redistribution of fortune?" Maxwell considered the question carefully. "I've been both poor and wealthy in my lifetime, Miss Davis. Neither state inherently makes one good or bad, happy or sad. But I've observed that wealth tends to amplify what's already present in a person's character." He gestured around my classroom. "In your case, it has amplified your capacity to nurture growth and potential in others. With your brother, it initially amplified insecurity and the desire for validation." "And you?" I asked. "What did it amplify in you?" His smile deepened, reaching his eyes. "Curiosity primarily, and perhaps a touch of benevolent meddling." Later that spring, I finally told Ryan about Maxwell's gift. We were walking along the riverfront park, ice cream cones in hand despite the lingering chill in the air. "You're kidding," he said when I finished my explanation, stopping mid-stride to stare at me. $10 million, from the convenience store guy." "The billionaire investor who happened to own the convenience store," I corrected gently. "Who also happened to be watching how you handled your windfall." Ryan absorbed this information, emotions playing across his face in rapid succession. Surprise, confusion, a flash of indignation, and finally, unexpectedly, laughter. "That's actually perfect," he said, resuming our walk. "The universe has a weird sense of humor, doesn't it? All this time I thought I was the lucky one." "Maybe we both were," I suggested, "just in different ways." Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "Your foundation, that program you funded at my old high school for at-risk kids, that was you all along." I nodded, feeling strangely relieved to have this final secret revealed. "Anonymous donation," Ryan mused, "while I was making Instagram videos about my car collection. God, the contrast is embarrassing." "It's not a competition," I reminded him. "We're on different journeys." "Yeah, but yours is a lot less embarrassing in retrospect," he said with a self-deprecating smile. Maybe I could help with your foundation. I don't know much about education, but I'm learning about sustainable investment. Could be useful." The offer, tentative and genuine, represented something money couldn't buy: growth, connection, purpose. In that moment, I felt wealthier than any lottery could have made me. Life's true riches, I've learned, aren't measured in bank balances or possessions. They're found in the ability to create positive change, to grow through challenges, and to connect authentically with others. Maxwell Henderson's gift wasn't really the money, it was the opportunity to discover these truths on my own terms. As for Ryan and me, we continue rebuilding our relationship one conversation at a time. He's finding his way toward a more meaningful life, and I'm expanding the foundation's work while still teaching the kindergarten class I love. Our paths, once diverged by fortune's uneven hand, have begun to converge again around shared values and understanding. The greatest wealth, after all, isn't what we have but what we give to others, to our communities, and to the future we help create through our choices each day. So I ask you, what unexpected gift has changed your perspective on what truly matters? How would you use resources to create positive change in the world? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. I'd love to hear your own stories of transformation and purpose. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, our greatest wealth lies in how we lift others along the way.